The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to another edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu, and we've got a great show from you. More controversy from the NFL. Surprise, surprise. Controversy from Greg Buchanan. Also not a surprise. Speaking of which, we got to get to him. How's it going, Greg?
Controversy with me? Never, never. I have friends everywhere.
You are the Pope amongst all of the people here in Lloydminster.
Yes.
You are squeaky clean.
Is that a good thing or not?
We'll figure it out after this next half hour.
Talk to some referees. Oh, there's one, a former one.
Well, there you go. And that gets to our guest. Great segue. Of course, you are a former referee, as well as you are the VP at Holy Rosary. And on top of that, the communications for Raiders Athletics as well. Of course, we're talking about Jason Almond. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me on today.
We're glad to have you on, especially we got some great topics locally, including Raiders football, but we'll get to that in a second. First of all, speaking of local, let's talk about the Lloydminster Bobcats. 7 games in, they're now mired in a 4-game losing streak. It's early. It's what happens. Usually teams aren't formed in the first 2 weeks of a season. It takes a lot more time than that. But is there a cause for concern for this team in terms of the way they've played in those past 4 games? Very limited in terms of, well, they've outshot their opponents, but on Sunday against Bonneville, a rival, you think they'd be up for the game. They only put up 15 shots and looked flat throughout the 60 minutes. Maybe a little bit towards the latter half of the third period, but outside of that, they are hurting, not just offensively, but also with Taylor Mulder out, possibly a guy who would help out in that situation, a big body up front. What do you guys say seems to be the problem, and is this something that is a real cause for concern for Lloydminster?
Well, it's early on in the season. They're only 7 games in. There's a lot still to offer for the team.
So don't push the panic button, is what you're saying?
No. Any time early in the season, look at some of the professional teams that have started off flat, and they turn it around after 10 or 15 games, depending on the league. And they're really only a couple of wins out of being in second place in the standings. So, with games coming up, I think they have the getting together with the showcase this weekend. So they've got some teams from the south that they're going to be playing, and maybe they can steal a few points. And Bonneville and Fort Mac will be battling it out this week too.
Yeah, it's 7 games in. It's not even the end of September. Like, we got a lot of hockey left, and there's no use of panicking. You're still putting a lot of your team together, and this team is different than any other team because you're building for this season. Don't get me wrong, they want to win this season, they want to compete in the playoffs, they want to have a long playoff run, they want to win a league championship like everybody else, but at the same time they're building for next season, they're building for the RBC. So they're not building for March of this season, they're building for March of next year as well. So you got to keep that in mind. They have some kids that have been proven goal scorers in different leagues and in different levels. They have to now step up. I think more than anything that's a concern, if there is a concern for Gord and Gary right now, is that they're getting outworked. And a Gary team and a Gord team, they do not like to get outworked. And I think that's a concern right now. But trust me, in a few practices with limited pucks, they'll get rid of that issue in a hurry.
So again, I understand where you guys are coming from, but don't you consider that the frustration that's being built up now is a big thing, and that maybe there's going to have to be a personnel move here or there? Not necessarily with the coaches, but I mean like with a player or two. Maybe they have to juggle some things or make a statement.
No,
you guys don't agree?
No, I know the media, they have to just say there's concerns, and it's a few weeks into the season. Like, trust me, Gord and Gary have been around hockey for a long time. I don't think their guys are sitting there scratching their heads after 7 games going, oh my God, what are we going to do? No, they're fine. It'll work out.
All right, guys, we'll move on to the next topic. Roger Goodell. Maybe things aren't fine with him per se, but he did come out on Friday to apologize for his actions, saying, look, I didn't act accordingly to the Ray Rice situation, and now this thing has kind of blown up, so I'm the one to take onus. However, some people feel that it's too little too late, and perhaps that he didn't come across as sincere as he tried to be. Do you guys agree with that assessment, or do you think he actually was right for coming out and was sincere?
Well, I think you look at a lot of the other athletes, or like a Tiger Woods or any of the other professional organizations where they've had to make these big apologies. I think politically speaking, he's done the right thing that way. Maybe a little late in terms of the timing of when he came out to apologize, but still maybe missing a few things where he's actually should have had some of the apologies to the families or the people that were actually hurt in these situations, as opposed to just to the league and how things were handled. I think he could have gone a little bit farther, but it's certainly a step in the right direction to come out and apologize on that.
He's trying to save face. Like, who's kidding who? Like, he knows there's egg all over the NFL's face right now. And I saw better detective work at Barnaby Jones and what the NFL did with all this. You know, and the NFL just, they knew the videotape was there. And you can say whatever you want to say the NFL, but they knew both sides that videotape. And to say they didn't get that videotape until after the fact, if they did, then they really did not do their homework.
When he called this press conference, I found it interesting. It almost seemed like he was going to, perhaps in the beginning of it, maybe resign, maybe step down as commissioner. Didn't sound that way.
Well, he was asked.
Later on.
He was
Well,
asked
he was asked several questions about that, considering his stance on ignorance when it came to Sean Payton and the whole Bounty Gate, and saying ignorance, you cannot plead ignorance in a case like this. That's very serious. In his case, that's what he's doing. But it's completely circumstantial in the evidence, right? It's Roger Goodell that has to deal with this, not necessarily him dealing with a different person or somebody else that's in trouble. But what I want to get to is this: when you have a guy like Roger Goodell who's in that system, should he step down, considering this is arguably a big gaffe, that maybe he should kind of take a step back and say, you know what? Maybe I was definitely wrong. I mishandled this. I should step down. Because in most jobs, if someone screws up at this type of level, they would normally be asked to be taken down.
But at the same time, most jobs don't have one boss. He has several bosses. He has
Well, in all
owners.
fairness, he rules with an iron fist, or at least appears to rule with an iron fist.
Unless
This time
it comes down to him.
Well, now he's going to get in a little trouble because of what's happening, so he's had to kind of scale back the powers a little bit and kind of let other owners and, of course, the FBI investigate in terms of what actually happened. But outside of that, this guy seemed to be judge, jury, and executioner, and you know what? He made a big mistake. I think he should go.
Well, and you look at the owners and where they come from as well. Like, as long as they still want him in that position. Obviously, this is the hot topic right now, and there's many other things that he's probably done good things for the league. But with this one right now, maybe they should even look at another person in terms of like how the NHL, where they have a different person in charge of suspensions and handling all of the misbehaviors in the league and whatnot. So maybe that's an area that he does step back from and just takes care of the other business part of the
Remember,
league.
it wasn't all of the owners. I want to say this before we have to go to break, though. It wasn't all the owners that voted him in to become NFL commissioner to take over politics.
But don't kid you. The owners will not get rid of him unless it costs them money. If it's costing them money, if they lose sponsors for their league, for their teams, and if it hits the owners in the pocketbook, then Roger's done.
All right, guys, we're going to come back after a commercial break, and when we do, we're going to talk about Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. They lost to Seattle, but is there at least a moral victory for the Broncos? Well, we'll tell you coming up.